You skip lunch once. By 2 in the afternoon, your hands are shaking, your patience is gone, and you're calling it hangry. Your stomach growls loud enough that a stranger could hear it. Your body is treating this like an emergency. It wants food, and it wants you to know about it. Now imagine you skipped water instead of food. No shaking yet. No dramatic growling. Just a dry mouth, a little fatigue you'd probably blame on a bad night's sleep. Maybe a faint headache you'd swallow a painkiller for and forget about. It feels like nothing. One of these is a mild inconvenience. The other is the faster way to die. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why your own body has no idea which one is which, and why it's been lying to you about it your entire life. For roughly 300,000 years, both threats were real, and both were constant. Meat ran out for days at a time. Fruit and roots thinned out with the seasons. Water disappeared for even longer, in places where the ground itself turned to dust between rains, and the nearest reliable source was a day's walk away, if you knew where to look. Your ancestors lived inside this exact math every single dry season, every single migration. The ones who guessed wrong about which threat to fix first simply didn't get the chance to pass the guess down. So which one actually kills you faster? Your body already has an opinion. It might be the wrong one. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The answer isn't close. In November 1944, physiologist Ansel Keys began what's now known as the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. 36 healthy young men, all volunteers, agreed to live on roughly 1,600 calories a day for 24 straight weeks at the University of Minnesota. Real hunger, measured in a lab, funded by the U.S. government to figure out how to safely refeed famine victims after the war. The results were brutal, but slow. The men lost more than a quarter of their body weight. Their hearts slowed down. Their body temperature dropped so low that some wore coats indoors in summer. Their hair thinned. Their legs swelled with fluid. Their weakened bodies could no longer manage properly. They grew obsessed with food, talking about recipes for hours, irritable, exhausted, some unable to think about anything else. It took months to break these healthy young men down this badly. Not days, months. Now compare that to water. Dr. Claude Piantadosi, a physiologist at Duke University, has placed the outer limit of human survival without water at around 100 hours, just over 4 days for a healthy adult resting in mild conditions. Push that same person into real heat, and the window can collapse to a single day, sometimes hours. Wilderness instructors still teach a version of the same rough math. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. The exact numbers shift. The order never does. But that's not the strange part. So picture it properly. 2 members of the same foraging band get separated during a dry season trek. The kind, the Jew, hoansi people of the Kalahari were still practicing within living memory, documented by anthropologist Richard B. Lee during his fieldwork in the region. One of them is carrying dried meat, wrapped and rationed, enough to last a week. No water source anywhere in sight. The other has nothing to eat, but finds a patch of damp sand at dusk, and does what generations before her did. She digs down to where the sand turns dark, packs the hole with soft grass, pushes a long, hollow reed into the center, and sucks, pulling moisture up out of the ground itself, one mouthful at a time, spitting each one down a second reed into an empty ostrich eggshell to save for later. By the second day, the one with meat and no water is already worse off than she is. His mouth can't produce enough saliva to swallow the dried meat he's carrying, so he stops trying and lets it sit untouched in its wrapping. His urine, on the rare occasion he can produce any, has gone the color of strong tea. By the 3rd day, his blood itself is thickening. There simply isn't enough fluid left in his system, so his heart has to beat faster and work harder just to push what remains through his body. His thinking turns foggy. His hands stop being steady. He is not thinking about hunger anymore. Hunger stopped being his problem on day 1. She is uncomfortable, weak, a little irritable, her energy clearly dropping day by day. But she is stable. Her body has already started switching fuel sources, burning stored fat for energy, the exact metabolic shift. Ansel Keys measured decades later in his Minnesota lab, just slower and less severe, because she still has water to run the whole system on. She could, in theory, keep functioning like this for weeks, foraging as she goes, refilling her ostrich egg from the sip well each evening. And then there's the detail nobody expects. Your body built an enormous backup system for going without food. Fat. Pounds of it. Laid down specifically to be burned slowly across days, sometimes weeks, when meals stop coming. Evolution planned carefully for famine. It even built a second backup behind that one, your own muscle, broken down for fuel once the fat runs low. The body cannibalizing itself in a very deliberate, very gradual order. What it never built you is a backup system for water. There's no organ anywhere in your body that stores gallons for later. Your own metabolism produces a small amount on its own, roughly a cup a day, as a byproduct of digestion nowhere close to the 2 to 3 liters you lose just existing. Awake or asleep, doing absolutely nothing. When the outside supply runs out, there is no reserve tank to switch to. Blood volume simply starts dropping. A review published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that measurable declines in physical and mental performance begin once you've lost as little as 2% of your body's water long before you'd call yourself thirsty. Keep dropping past that point, and it stops being a slow decline. Blood pressure falls. The heart, forced to beat faster to compensate for less fluid to move, starts to struggle. Doctors call the endpoint hypovolemic shock, the medical term for what happens when there simply isn't enough blood volume left to keep organs supplied with oxygen. It's not a gradual fade, it's closer to a system failure. The evidence for this asymmetry is buried in your own body's design, which raises a question nobody likes the answer to. Why does hunger feel like the emergency, and thirst feels like nothing right up until it's everything? Because your alarm system was calibrated for a very specific world, a world where thirst usually got solved within hours. A stream, a puddle after rain, a sip well. Someone in your band had already dug last season and remembered the exact location of. Hunger needed a louder alarm, a more persistent one, because food took real effort to find and track and kill or dig up, and it paid to start looking long before you were in any real danger. So your body quietly underwarns you about the exact threat that kills you fastest, and loudly overwarns you about the one it's actually built to survive for weeks. That mismatch never got fixed. It's sitting in your kitchen right now. You've got a fridge stocked for days, sometimes weeks, and a tap that has never once run dry in your entire life. So the alarm built for real scarcity barely gets exercised anymore. Skip a glass of water for 6 hours and you'll feel almost nothing, maybe a little dry, a little slow, nothing you'd call an emergency. Skip lunch for 6 hours and you're irritable enough to snap at a stranger over something small, checking the clock, already planning your next meal. The exact mismatch that once kept your ancestors alive now just makes you complain loudly about the wrong threat, while the genuinely dangerous one goes almost completely silent. Here's the part that should actually unsettle you. You could survive a full week without a single meal, uncomfortable but functional, exactly like the men in Ansel Keys' lab. Try that with water, and you would not make it past day 4. Maybe 5 if you stayed still, stayed cool, and got lucky. And yet almost nobody walks around anxious about their water supply. People obsess over meal plans, grocery runs, what's in the fridge. Nobody sets a reminder to drink water the way they set one to eat. You call it hangry, and you laugh about it, because your body never got the memo that the world changed. For roughly 300,000 years, thirst was the threat that should have scared you first. It still is. It just never learned how to raise its voice loud enough for you to notice.